Welcome to MDIC Live, where we highlight the latest projects from the Medical Device Innovation Consortium. Thank you for joining us for this session entitled Realizing the Potential of Computational Modeling and Simulation Across the Medical Device Product Lifecycle. Joining us today is MDIC Senior Program Director Jithesh Veetil and Project Manager Taylor Metheny. Welcome to MDIC Live. Welcome.
Hi, Deb. So my name is Taylor Metheny, and I am a project manager here at the MDIC. I was lucky enough to join the MDIC in January as an intern while I was getting my master's in biotechnology at Georgetown University, and I moved over to a full-time position as a project manager this May. And the projects that I help manage here at the MDIC are the computational modeling and simulation, which we're going to discuss a little today, as well as some of the digital health initiative projects.
Thanks, Deb. I'm Jithesh Veetil, Program Director for Digital Health and Technology. Digital health and technology includes computational modeling simulation, a lot of software-related activities, cybersecurity for medical device, and so on. So I have a broad portfolio of program activities at MDIC. By training, I'm a PhD graduate from University of Arkansas with biomedical engineering. Worked a lot in glucose biosensors. Then I worked at NIH campus and other nonprofit organizations before joining MDIC almost 4 years ago. Happy to be here and looking forward to this conversation on modeling and simulation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Now, can you give us an overview of the Computational Modeling and Simulation Initiative here at MDIC? What problems does this initiative seek to solve, and so on?
Yeah, I can start with that. As Deb introduced this session, the computational modeling and simulation has got its potential across the total product life cycle of a medical device. Maybe it's easier for me to explain one specific project so that folks who are listening can realize how powerful this area can be. We all know that if we were to market a medical device, particularly high-risk medical device, we do need a lot of clinical trials. And when we say clinical trials, it is a long, expensive process, which include patients. Again, recruiting patients is equally hard. So it's a really burdensome process, but it's an important process in getting safe and effective medical devices to market. Now, let's assume we have a power of, we are doing a clinical trial with 100 people or 100 patients. What if we can do that clinical trial with, let's assume, 70 people, and then have the same power of clinical trial by augmenting remaining 30 people with simulated data? So you only are having 70 real people, and remaining 30 is kind of computationally modeled data, and without sacrificing any of the power of the actual clinical trial. So that particular mechanism has been utilized or developed by using computational modeling and simulation, and it's been employed or being employed. So that was one of the earliest projects with MDIC. We call it as virtual patient. So using computational modeling and simulation, we create this cohort of patient data, augment it with the existing clinical trial data, and try to utilize for regulatory submission. So this is kind of think out of the box kind of a situation. So what we are doing is harnessing the power of computational modeling and simulation, and trying to tackle some of the really complicated issues. As you can imagine, everything we do at MDIC, patients are at the center. And if we can accelerate this process of getting very important, very innovative devices, particularly high-risk devices, into the patient sooner, cheaper or effective manners, that's going to be a big win-win for industry and for the patients whom we all try to serve. So that's one small snippet of how modeling and simulation can be advantageous to the whole ecosystem. And I probably can ask Taylor to chime in with some of the important projects under this programmatic area that we are leading here at MDIC. Taylor?
Yes, so I'll talk to you a little bit about some projects that we have going on. So the first being the Computational Modeling and Simulation Landscape Report. So in 2014, the MDIC released a survey to gain some insight into how medical device companies are using computational modeling. And the steering committee was then able to analyze the survey and publish their findings. Well, given that the survey was in 2014, there's been a lot of advancements in the field to today's date. So the steering committee decided to re-release the survey with minimal adjustments in a few of the questions that were previously asked. And so for the last few months, we have been analyzing those results and are in the final steps of the landscape report. So the landscape report will help to identify the changes, the barriers, and the opportunities for growth in computational modeling and simulation. And this will probably be released, we're hoping, for October, September of this year. And then another project that we've been working on is the publicly funded human body simulation models. So these models can provide a lot of insight into the clinical performance in patient care and can help accelerate product development and reduce time to market. And we think this is very beneficial because a lot of these models require a large amount of time, cost, and expertise needed for these to be credible. So we're very excited as we undergo that project. And then lastly, I'll talk about our blood damage models. So our blood damage models group actually has two subgroups, the hemolysis focused group and the thrombosis focused group. And these groups are comprised of scientists from FDA, NIH, and various industries. And they're working to develop regulatory grade models for both hemolysis and thrombosis to make it more of a quantitative and clinically relevant rather than qualitative practice of analyzing this data.
That's incredible. That's really good initiatives that you're working on right now. So now when we're thinking about it, like what are some of the advantages and the potential limitations that could come with computational modeling and simulation, and how do you envision MDIC's role in this area?
Okay, I can kind of touch on this one a little bit. So Jithesh, he already spoke on some of the advantages, but like he said, CM&S can be used throughout the total product life cycle, from product development, clinical evaluation, post-market performance, failure assessment. And this technology is so important because it has the potential to reduce and eliminate the need for physical prototyping, like Jithesh mentioned earlier, and very rapid, cost-effective version of evaluating these medical devices. And then Jithesh, if you want to talk a little bit about any limitations.
Yeah, I can. So we were initially giving the rosy part of the modeling and simulation, but it's also incredibly important to make sure that we do it right, because we can't just say, okay, we can do it everything using computational model or by simulation. So that means you need a really skilled workforce, and in some cases we need visionaries in this particular field. Now, this involves technology, and some of these models and simulations are complex. And as you can imagine, any human anatomical model or physiological models, these are complex models. So if we are computing it or simulating it using computers, we need all these regulatory grade models, important models. And running that models can be equally challenging. We might need really high-end computing powers that might be financially burdensome for some of the smaller companies. So there are still challenges. And then other barriers are, this is still upcoming field. Manufacturers have demonstrated the power of modeling and simulation in various aspects, but there are regulatory requirements how we can bring these activities into the submission, regulatory submission, and be as and get up the products approved. So those are all still work in progress, and that's where I think MDIC's role is. And as I said in my initial remarks, the virtual patient project where we did one case study using the cardiac ICDs, and demonstrated that we can have computational modeled data or to augment the clinical trial data. We demonstrated that, and we made all these resources available so that other small or medium sized or even large manufacturers who wanted to try out these new methodologies or new mechanisms in their development process for devices, they can adopt it. So and then Taylor just now mentioned about blood damage modeling. So again, this requires a lot of initial bench testing in some cases, and then working to validate those bench testing with modeled and simulated data. So it's a lot of inter-department activities that requires and produce this validated data. So MDIC is bringing stakeholders from regulatory bodies like such as FDA, MHRA, and industry, of course, as well as in some cases a lot of academic expertise. And of late, we have been working really closely with the National Institute of Health, NIH, because they fund a lot of computational models, and some of these models are publicly available. We wanted to make sure that these models can be brought up to the regulatory grade. So we are acting as MDIC, we are acting as that liaison across this diverse group of stakeholders and realize or harness the potential of modeling and simulation.
That's great. And like, if we take it a little bit further, per se, what effect do you think CM&S has on medical device providers, patients? How can we see that in action?
Yeah, I'll start with the patients actually. So you probably, or we all know someone in our lives, right, who has an implant, or who has a stent or something like that, and so they're all getting those things is in many cases life saving, their quality of life, right? So patients are at the center of it, and we all know how important those innovation, those treatment options, and so on. So in getting these high risk devices, as I mentioned, is not an easy task. It's time consuming, really expensive, and so on. So I think in the past couple of years, the way the advancement in the technology, to do this, the computing power, that has made a significant stride in changing the way that we develop, or looking at the way we develop devices. So that's the clear benefit, in terms of patients. So you get more innovative devices and a less amount of burden to the patients or patients waiting. So that's the key theme here. And then for medical device providers, and just now Taylor mentioned that some of the prototyping and the initial testing, if we have the power of modeling and simulation to do or take away some of the experiments. For example, historically, a lot of device development involved a lot of animal testing and bench testing. Now, modeling and simulation has got the power of replacing some of these things. And when think about in a real big picture scenario, majority of or many of the clinical trials or initial preclinical studies are performed in lab animals, mice or rat, or and so on. I mean, and even if you try to extrapolate it to human system, is still a big stretch, right? There are definitely value, but what I'm trying to say is, if we have more humanized models or human-like models in computationally, then that's a big win. We don't have to go through that whole process of animal models and bench models, and some of the validation testing required in the process that can also be kind of either replaced or reduced. So every step we are talking about improvement, safety, innovation and speed and all those things, right? That's the package. That's the power of modeling and simulation. So, in from innovation point or the device manufacturer's perspective, that's yeah, there are huge business incentives, and end of the day, patients are going to get the best out of it.
Definitely. Definitely. Now, if we are going to think about this in the field, what are some examples in your experience of successful CM&S and use cases in recent years?
I can take this one. Thanks, Deb. So we're really excited about our landscape report that I mentioned earlier. And one of the exciting things about it is we will be able to highlight various case studies that have actually used computational modeling and simulation and really seen the positive benefits from it. So right now we're planning about 6 to 8 case studies that will be highlighted throughout that report that'll be able to give our readers real world evidence of how computational modeling has benefited their organizations. And we'll even be reaching out and looking for case studies after this has been posted. So this will be a portion of our MDIC website, and we would love to have case studies and to keep that as updated as possible and provide resources for those that are hoping to use computational modeling and simulation.
Wonderful. And when we are thinking about computational modeling, what do you think the future of this work looks like?
Yeah, I can take that. So our projects, again, as I said, it's a work in progress. We have been so fortunate to have some of the brightest minds from industry, FDA, and even academic centers or clinical centers helping us. But as I mentioned, we are just in the beginning. I mean, I would say still in the very beginning phase, right? One of the key projects I mentioned was virtual patient. Now, having the models or having the methodology as a proof of concept shared by MDIC, that's not the end vision or end goal, right? We wanted more adoption. So what we are trying to do these days in projects, let's make the resources available for the broader stakeholders, and then try to create more value and adoption around it. Now, for virtual patient, once the discussions around the virtual patient project has led to additional new projects where they are taking to the next level, and hopefully in the next couple of months, or probably in approximately in a year, we should be coming up with, not when I say we, the stakeholder community, it is not MDIC anymore, it's a broader community. We'll be coming out with some kind of a playbook for doing in silico clinical trials. In silico means we are utilizing computational modeling and simulation. So in silico clinical trials, that's a very ambitious project. Now, there are different tentacles, so that we are thinking about, of course, the modeling simulation as design development of the device process, that particular early phase of that process, and then the regulatory submission. How can we improve that, right? So all the different aspects, how can we incorporate or leverage from the modeling and simulation area? So we are thinking through that process. So many of the projects which we have right now are in the early stage, or where we see multiple years or a couple of more years more of really broad conversations.
Great. And when we are thinking about this and taking into consideration your role and how this interplays with MDIC's goals, how do you think MDIC can contribute to this conversation?
Yeah, I think yeah, MDIC is kind of unique. Those who are not familiar about MDIC, I would definitely encourage you to visit our website and see our overview. We are uniquely placed because we are a public-private partnership. MDIC, we don't do any lobbying or advocacy. We purely focus on collaborative efforts to advance the medical device field preliminarily through regulatory science. So that itself gives us a lot of leverage. So we have been bringing stakeholders for the past 10 years, as you can see, background from Taylor, and we are in the 10-year anniversary. So computational modeling simulation was one of the key programs right from the inception of MDIC. And I think there are a lot more opportunities, and we are continuing this process of engaging the stakeholders. So if you're not an MDIC member, do consider looking at our project and whether it makes sense for a manufacturer can become MDIC a member. And then, particularly for the modeling and simulation program, there are a lot of active engagement opportunities. For example, the blood damage modeling working group is looking for experts on modeling and simulation. We have recently initiated an publicly funded models our group, and again, there are opportunities for engaging with us. And I think I also wanted to highlight one of the upcoming programs. MDIC is going to have its annual public forum on September 12th, and we have a dedicated session on modeling and simulation. And you heard me and Taylor talking about modeling and simulation, but we are no means the subject matter experts to talk about this. So annual public forum, we have very senior level experts on modeling simulation from FDA, from industry, from NIH. And when I say industry, we have traditional manufacturing company, medical device manufacturers, and then we have companies which are exclusively focusing on medical device computation modeling softwares or models or computation modeling from a modeling perspective. So we have a really robust panel session envisioned for the annual public forum. So I would urge the audience here to consider joining us for that event. So a lot more. And again, one another area, we have only highlighted few projects, but all these projects had got a lot of resources, and most of the MDIC resources are freely, widely available through our website. So maybe I would encourage folks to look at our resource page, particularly for modeling simulation. In some cases, we have some white papers or landscape report, as Taylor mentioned. But in some cases, we have R packages or some kind of tools developed by this expert. So they're all available through our website. So definitely consider um, uh, scouting through our resource page. And then, of course, reach out to us. The program staff, project staff here are more than happy to help you guys. MDIC is a good platform for networking as well as learning some of this advancements or innovation in the field.
Definitely. And to that end, what are some things that MDIC is doing to educate stakeholders on these potential barriers that are like within CM&S, and how does that work looks like to help alleviate that? How is MDIC advancing and pushing the needle forward?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, um, you know, some of the folks who were leading MDIC's computation modeling and simulation program, for example, our board champion is Randy Schiesel from Boston Scientific. He has been a champion for this topic right from the get-go. So there are folks, a subject matter expert involved right from the inception of MDIC, specifically focusing on modeling and simulation activities. And some of the ideas which have brought out, that has been hugely successful. Now, as you can imagine, the process of device development and getting into the market is not a easy task or not a fast process. So this all takes multiple iteration and time. So MDIC platform, we have been successful in having broader conversation, more ideas out into the field, and which further encourage people consider modeling and simulation as a good viable option. So I think that's a really big win for us, a big win for the industry, and big win for the patient. And we will, again, this is not an end goal. This is actually an ongoing process. So we have a lot more to cover, or long more to go.
Definitely. And before we bring this session to a close, I want to remind the people in our audience that this is an interactive session. So if you have any questions, feel free to write them down in the comments. Now, to bring this session to a close, and thank you for sharing your expertise with us this morning, I want to ask, like, what are some opportunities for engagement that are coming from your team for people who are watching this and either live or in the future?
Yeah, I think I already mentioned a few things. So um, consider visiting MDIC website for a lot more information than we shared here, and then attend MDIC's annual public forum. And particularly, we have a session on modeling and simulation, and many of our working groups and steering committee, we do have openings for engagement. And I wanted to highlight one more point. We by no means are restricted to US centric approach or US a geographical boundary. Our conversation, everything we do span beyond the geographical boundary of United States. I mean, we have a partnership and alliances with other organizations which align in this. And our mission in advancing modeling and simulation. For example, Avicen Alliance in European Union is a collaborator and partner with MDIC on modeling and simulation activities. So you don't have to restrict yourself. You don't have to restrict based on the geographical location. So reach out and let's know. And again, we always are looking forward to improve our programmatic areas, ideas from the broader stakeholders, whether it is from patients or experts on modeling and simulation. So please do feel free to reach out to us.
Great. So thank you so much for joining us this morning. Do you want to say any closing statements to our audience today?
Taylor?
Basically, just what Jithesh said. We hope to see you all at the annual public forum, and we thank you for taking the time to chat with us today and hear a little bit about our computational modeling program at the MDIC.
Yeah, I'm very happy and excited. And MDIC, we have an ongoing comment internally that many of the MDIC resources are world's best kept secret. But at the same time, whatever we are developing are extremely useful and most importantly, widely available, freely available, majority of the resources. So I'm glad to be part of this conversation and looking forward to more opportunities to engage with the broader audience. Thank you all.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having joined us. And we hope that you're able to join us for the next MDIC Live. As mentioned several times during this session, we have upcoming events for the annual public forum. You can search for more information about it at apf.mdic.org. So if you have the chance, please register. And thank you so much for joining us this morning for MDIC Live.